Welcome to Background Checks 101, a help desk for employers. The intention of this video is to present information for users of Consumer Reports and is not a substitute for legal advice. In this session, we will discuss pre-employment background screening policies. The National Association of Professional Background Screeners has put together a sample policy for performing pre-employment background checks. Developing a screening policy. Approximately 92% of companies conduct background screens prior to making a hiring decision. It is considered a best practice to have a pre-employment screening policy that follows federal, state, and EEOC guidelines. Did you know that there are plaintiffs' advocates who seek out companies that are non-compliant with federal, state, and EEOC guidelines? To name a few: American Association for Justice, American Civil Liberties Union, Legal Action Center, and National Employment Law Center. In this session, we will talk about important elements in developing a pre-employment screening policy. Some important criteria to consider would be starting with a statement of the policy, an introduction to the policy, a disclaimer of what is not the purpose of the policy, steps to follow in the procedure of the policy, a guide to develop a decision-making matrix for criminal results, and suggestions on when and who to run credit reports for employment purposes. Provide a statement why your organization conducts background checks. Consider the following: to determine or confirm the qualifications and suitability of a job candidate for the particular position for which the candidate is being considered. Ensure the safety of the public as well as a safe working environment. That the pre-employment screens will be conducted in accordance with applicable law. An introduction statement may include: who will get a background check? That the components of a background check will depend upon the position. A list of each company position and the required pre-employment checks for the position. That you as a company will comply with the Fair Credit Reporting Act and similar state FCRA laws in the jurisdiction in which your company does business. That results of a background check are confidential and only to be shared with members of your company on a strict need-to-know basis. A disclaimer may sound something like this: it is not the purpose of this policy to provide detailed information or descriptions of each individual pre-employment background check that can be performed. It is not the purpose of this policy to provide detailed information how to make a final decision regarding the results of a pre-employment background check. Every case must be decided on its own merits, subject to the company requirements that all candidates be treated equally and consistently. It is not the purpose of this policy to provide detailed information of all applicable law. Questions about these subjects should be directed to Human Resources or legal departments. This policy does not limit a company's right to hire, discipline, or terminate. This does not create a contract for employment. All employment is at will unless contract or law applies to the contrary. Here is a list of procedures to consider when developing a policy. Pre-employment background checks are required for all candidates. Attach a list for each position in the company and the required checks, which should be prepared by the Human Resources Department in consultation with the Legal Department. The right to perform additional pre-employment checks is reserved to HR, which shall consult legal if deemed necessary. All candidates will be required to sign appropriate authorizations and consents prior to the performing of any pre-employment background checks. Candidates that provide false or misleading information in their application or authorization may be eliminated from further consideration. Candidates are expected to provide accurate and complete information and not to omit material information needed to make a hiring decision. Pre-employment background checks should normally be completed before a candidate is offered a position. All job offers should be conditioned upon satisfactory completion of the pre-employment background checks. Prior to taking adverse action, appropriate pre-adverse and adverse action notices will be sent to the candidate pursuant to federal and state FCRA laws, together with a copy of the report. All candidates shall be individually reviewed and decisions made with respect to employment based upon the totality of the candidate's qualifications and the results of the pre-employment background checks. In general, the relevance of a particular pre-employment background check to a candidate's eligibility for employment is based upon the following factors: the nature of the job for which the applicant is considered, the nature of any adverse or negative information. In the case of a criminal matter, the facts surrounding the matter are particularly relevant. The age of any adverse or negative information. The age of the applicant at the time of the adverse incident in relation to the present may also be relevant. Having adverse information, including a criminal history or conviction, does not automatically preclude a candidate's eligibility for employment. Developing a matrix. To assist managers and HR personnel in reviewing criminal records, you may consider the following as guidelines in developing a criminal background checking matrix. Determine a review process at a local or regional level before a final decision is made. Determine when to consider individualized assessment. Determine when and if you can use records of arrest and non-convictions as a part of your qualifying process. Research if your company falls under any state FCRA and/or local statutes. A sample matrix may include listing the position with types of crimes that are relevant to the position and timeframes to consider for review. Other disqualifiers to consider may be omission, falsification, high school diploma, if required, college degree, if required, license verification, if required, employment, unable to verify employment, omission of employment on application, blatant employment discrepancies. Other considerations. If an individual is not eligible to work in the United States, they have received a non-confirmation of E-Verify. Invalid Social Security number was determined during the screening process. The applicant must produce Social Security number confirmation from the Social Security Administration. The applicant is found or confirmed on government terrorist or watch list. If positive urine or hair drug screen was received. If the applicant refuses to drug test. If an adulterated sample is returned for a drug screen. Credits for employment purposes. Consider the following. Employment credit reports will be used as follows. Positions. Accounts payable. Accounts receivable. Employees that handle cash or cash equivalents. Senior management. Having negative credit information does not automatically exclude an applicant. Every applicant will be individually considered. Under no circumstances should an employment decision be based solely on information in a credit report. Bankruptcy information shall not be considered. The credit report will be analyzed to determine the following. Is the employee in a problematic financial situation? For example, does the applicant have monetary judgments? If so, how much? What is the nature of the judgments? Are there liens against the applicant? Is the applicant being evicted or is a mortgage foreclosure pending? Is the applicant's car or other personal property being repossessed or has it recently been repossessed? The foregoing items evidence a need for money. That does not mean that a person in financial difficulty will engage in inappropriate activity. It does mean that the credit and other information about the applicant should be considered to determine if there is a likelihood that a defalcation will occur. In addition, consideration should be given to whether or not the applicant's personal financial problems will interfere with the ability to perform their duties. Discuss this with the applicant when appropriate to determine how the applicant is dealing with their problems, since some employees with personal problems are required and/or inclined to deal with them during the workday. Consider whether the applicant has sought consumer credit counseling or made an arrangement with creditors that would mitigate or eliminate this concern. Senior management applicants should be reviewed with respect to their ability to manage the company's affairs given their management of their personal obligations. Extenuating circumstances such as illness, divorce, or other family problems should be taken into consideration. The National Association for Professional Background Screeners has put together a sample policy for performing pre-employment background checks. Please follow the link for the full text. Please keep in mind the sample policy is not intended to provide legal advice. You should consult your own company's human resources and legal departments and/or obtain outside legal advice. Thank you for viewing the Screening Policy Puzzle Piece. Use this session as a building block for determination or review of your employment screening program.